Monday has been declared a day of mourning in Tatarstan after a passenger plane crash-landed, killing all 50 people on board, including the son of the Russian Republic's president. Locals have been bringing flowers to Kazan International Airport to mourn the victims. Well, RT's Igor Piskunov is there for us now. Igor, what is happening at the moment there at the airport?
Well, we've just managed to reach the airport in Kazan. Since it is still closed, it's going to remain so at least until noon. On Monday, we had to drive here from a nearby city around 130 miles away. There's very heavy police security here right now. We know that the site of the crash itself is also still blocked. Some relatives of the victims are here as well. We saw a woman whose face was covered in tears. She really did seem a bit lost, like she didn't know what was going on. She said that her nephew was among the killed passengers on board of that flight. Like you said, there are flowers here near the airport's buildings, lists of the victims as well. And psychologists are here since their help is really necessary right now, their assistance. And later on Monday, also, the relatives of the victims are going to be allowed to start identifying them. So the help of the psychologists is definitely going to be needed there as well.
And what details are emerging about this tragedy, Igor?
Well, the plane crash happened on Sunday evening. This was a flight from Moscow to Kazan. It's not a long flight, it's less than 2 hours. As the plane was landing, what we know is that it exploded, killing all 50 people on board, including the son of the Republic's president and the head of the local department of the Federal Security Service. So 44 passengers and 6 crew members, all of them were killed. There are several versions into what happened and what caused this explosion, from a human error, technical malfunction of the airplane itself, and there are reports that the crew, prior to the landing around 500 meters before they actually attempted landing, they did allegedly report some technical problems with the aircraft. There's also a version that there may have been some problems with the fuel. The plane was fueled at the Domodedovo airport in Moscow. Samples of that fuel have been taken. They're now being analyzed. There's also even a version of a possible terror attack. But so far, no official version has been adopted. That's still it's still yet to be announced, and it is going to be determined or at least we're going to find out more about what happens when the data from the flight recorders is analyzed as well. But concerning the plane, it is a very old aircraft. It was a very old aircraft, over 20 years old. The airline's representatives, they say that despite that, it did go through all the necessary tests and servicing, but there's lots of speculation on the internet from people who claim to have flown on board this aircraft as passengers even a few days ago, and they say that its condition was quite poor.
OK, thank you, Igor. That's RT's Igor Piskunov live from Kazan there. Thank you. Well, as you heard Igor say there, Tatarstan Airlines claim there were no known technical problems with the plane before it took off. However, earlier in the day, the same aircraft had flown from Kazan to Moscow, and passengers on board reported huge vibrations when the aircraft landed. We spoke to one of them.
The flight itself went quite smoothly, but just before the landing, the plane started vibrating fiercely. Initially, I thought it was the weather, but when we got out of the plane, it turned out the weather was quite nice. The plane was shaking, it was dragged from side to side. We landed on our first attempt, but it was a really bad landing, and I felt like the plane was going to roll off the runway.
Well, investigators are hoping to get more clues from the plane's all-important flight data recorders. David Learmonth, the operations and safety editor of Flight Global magazine, broke it down for us.
It's 2 boxes. One of them records all of the communications on the flight deck. That's what the pilots say to each other, what the pilots say on the radio, all the incoming voice messages from air traffic control. And also you can even hear things like the engine noise. If there was an explosion on board, you would hear that. Then the other box is I suppose you could say the main one, but they're both very important in their own way, is the flight data recorder, which records basically the health of the airplane. It records what the engines are doing. It records the profile of the aircraft's speed, its attitude. It records all sorts of parameters about the airlines, what the airline was doing from minute to minute. And there will be at least half an hour of recording of this, and it may be more, before the time that the accident actually happens. So the authorities will have a great deal of information to work with.
Well, the Kazan crash comes a year and a half after a passenger jet crashed during takeoff in Siberia. 12 out of 43 people survived that accident, which was blamed on technical failure. So let's take a look now at what the key causes are of air tragedies over the years. According to statistics from planecrashinfo.com, more than half of air crashes are caused by errors made by flight crews. Technical problems with aircraft are responsible for just under a quarter of problems leading to accidents. And of course, bad weather conditions can also be a factor, and they are behind 12% of crashes. And finally, 9% of air incidents are due to terrorist attacks or hijackings. Earlier, we asked Captain Mark Weiss, who is a civil aviation leader at the Spectrum Group and used to fly the same kind of plane that crashed in Kazan, what he thinks could have led to this catastrophe.
That was a poor repair that led to fatigue and obviously catastrophic failure. But all of these factors are going to be looked at. Normally in an emergency, you want to get the aircraft on the ground safely as quickly as possible. So what would have caused the aircraft to not land on its first attempt? Was weather a factor? Was crew fatigue, crew illness? There are going to be so many things that are going to be looked at, keeping in mind that accidents generally don't happen from a single event. It's a chain of events that lead to a catastrophe like this.